Um, so welcome everyone. Tonight we have Melanie with us, and I'm very excited because this month we're focusing on sex, self-love, and sensuality. And I am ready to deep dive into this juicy topic. So I'm going to ask questions as they pop into my head, raw and unfiltered, so that you guys get the unedited version, which I think we should just keep it real and authentic. And I'm excited to see where we go tonight. So welcome, Melanie. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're
How are you? I'm
welcome. I
so
love these types of unscripted conversations. They're brilliant.
I know they are. So, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do and how you got into your line of work?
Yeah, gosh, that's quite a long question to answer. My background, funnily enough, is in IT, would you
Oh,
believe?
wow. Okay.
So I'm still am a database expert. I work with charities as a consultant right now.
Wow.
Um, just quite funny. Um, but I've been on a personal development journey for about 16 years now. Um, I started off with an organization called Landmark many years ago, and I loved their work, and still do. But it helped me to grow and turn my life around.
Mm,
It was quite when I hit my 30s, I was in a sort of quite a dark place where I was overweight, had been drinking heavily and having sex with random strangers.
mm,
And in fact, this is sort of how it led to me doing this work because
mm.
I also, from quite a young age, from about 19, had a BDSM experience,
Oh, did
which
you?
I didn't know what BDSM was at 19. I mean, it's
How did
probably
you do that at 19?
before the word was even invented, I think.
Right.
It was on a holiday romance holiday in Skegness and Butlins.
Wow.
Those in the UK hopefully might have heard of that. Um, and I got lost my glasses in the swimming pool, and the lifeguard rescued them and asked me out to the local disco, and, and we had this night of going to the disco, having a few drinks, and then going outside and rolling around on the grass, and then going back to his shared caravan. And we were play fighting. It was like this rough and tumble play fight type thing. And at some point, it was getting rougher and rougher, and he picked up a belt and hit me with it. Mm. Yeah, and this was before consent and before BDSM and all that. So just did it without consent. I mean, it's probably not good looking back, and luckily I liked it.
Right.
But it took me on a journey of a lot of shame because my parents found out and they were horrified. And
They found out how.
I found some notice marks on my back when I stopped going swimming on the holiday.
Oh.
And so they inquired and they were shocked. And so, there was a lot of shame around something that actually, for some reason, I liked, and I didn't understand why I liked it. So for
Mm,
many years, I swung between sort of relationships where I had these sensible boyfriends versus what I sort of had in this moment, which was a really passionate, exciting, sensual
mm,
experience at 19.
mm,
So in my 30s, I started exploring that, but I also wasn't very happy in myself and my own body. So
mm.
it led me down a path of going sort of in darker and darker, so like more like pain can be quite
Yeah.
addictive,
Mm,
it's and so when I started on my personal development journey, I started to learn to love myself again, and then 5 years ago I got into Tantra.
mm,
And again, that's, no surprise in some respects, looking back at my sexual history, that
mm,
I would love Tantra. And so, when I came to Tantra, I realized that there is a whole world of like connecting to your own sensuality, which
mm,
is, beautiful and loving and connecting, and you can let go. It's a really healing journey. You can let go a lot of that shame and that, that stuff that we think we're weird in some way, or we're not accepted, we're too much. I always had this experience. I was too much for men.
Mm. So I have a
So
question.
yeah.
So with the whole BDSM experience, how long did it take you to sort of get through the shame, and did that impact like your other sexual experiences going forward into other relationships? Did it make you feel as though, okay, maybe I shouldn't go here, or were you more private about what you were doing, or did it make you sort of become a bit more promiscuous and less caring about what you did and who you did it with? Yeah, it went the other way.
Well, I think I've been through various journeys with it. For many, many years, um, I swung between having long-term relationships where I gave up on that part, and then when I separated, I swung to going to the casual,
Mm,
BDSM style relationships. Um, and then I started getting into this habit of getting drunk because that would lose some of my boundaries and I wouldn't,
mm.
lose my inhibitions, and I'd go far further and, than I would have done if I wasn't drunk. Um, and so through it's been quite a long journey, really. I think through personal development, I started tackling that. Had a partner who, we were playing with it in a bit more of a loving way.
Mm.
Um, but I still feel like I'm dealing with that.
Why do you think
Now,
so? Yeah, because you said it's
yeah.
15 years is a long time. So where do you think, and I think this is a really good conversation because I mean, I'm sure, quite sure you're not the only one who's had something like that happen and people like don't know what to do. And this is why I like to have these conversations. So was there like a root cause that embedded that shame, or was that the incident that happened but that made you feel like, okay.
Um, I think a lot of what we deal with comes from very young childhood. I had some I had quite some intense experiences. My mum and my dad separated when I was about 5 years old,
Mm.
which was quite traumatic for me looking back. And I blamed myself as well for a lot of that stuff that
Did
happened.
you?
Yeah. So I do think there's a lot now that happen in our childhood that can very much impact our ability to be intimate, be able to connect in a loving way. Because I do believe if we can't love ourselves, it's difficult to have that intimacy with another person because there'll always be that gap.
Mm, that just gave me chills. So that's a really,
Yeah.
that's a big one because I don't think that I think the majority of us have pretty challenging childhood. I don't think I've met many people who've said, "Oh, I've met a few, but not less than more." Um, and the sense of I guess belonging and the trauma and all of that stuff. The fact that it can impact self love, which is obviously, I mean, that's a direct correlation, but the fact that that then leads on to how you show up in relationships and the types of relationships that you choose, um, that's pretty significant. So,
It is.
how do you identify to you? So, how would you identify how your childhood impacts your connection to self, your sense of self love, um, and how do you advise someone to start that journey to healing?
Mm. It's a very good question. I think the way I teach it now is to very much connect to your body.
Okay, how?
So your body has very much internal wisdom, and it knows what it needs. It knows what it needs to heal. Um, so we're very, as a Western society, head driven. We come from lots of thoughts in here, analytical thoughts like we should be doing this, we should do that, and often we squash down this quieter voice, which can often be like, I don't know whether you've ever heard of like the gut, like this sense of like your gut or your heart has things to say, or other body parts can have things to say. Your vagina, your yoni, as I like to call it, has things
Mm.
to say too.
Mm-hmm.
If you can talk to plants and you can talk to things, then why not talk to your body?
It's true.
Um, and so what I teach now is to connect to your body, and very often we get this sense of the child. in that body, so we can actually, there's very often a child part that we can talk to, and we can ask that child part, what does it want? What does it want right now?
So what's the process look like for talking to your body? Is it sort of like getting into meditative state, lying on a bed or a chair and like just scanning your body? How do you do that?
So it does generally start with some sort of body scan just to relax you and to get a sense into your body. But if you do it with a practitioner like me, what I would generally do is, once you're, more relaxed, is that I would ask questions. I would ask
All right, so you do it with
questions.
somebody. It's not something
Yeah.
you do on your own.
Yeah, although the intention is, I mean, there's books on it. It's a process I called body focusing, which that's where it comes from.
Mm,
Um, so there are books you can teach yourself, definitely. I
mhm.
think there's power in having someone do it with you, certainly the first few times, because that body voice can be very quiet, and it can be, we're not used to listening to our body. So it can be really good because a practitioner can help you sort of delve into your body so that you get a sense of it. And then, once you get a bit more practiced with it, it's something I use now. Like when I go to the fridge and I want something to eat, and I'm like, oh, should I be having that cream cake that I want? And no, my body doesn't want that, because it will put me in pain because I've got arthritis, or
Ah, oh,
so when we speak to our body, it tells us a lot of stuff about
I
what we
like
need.
that. I like that a lot. I like that a lot because it's not just, I love that because a lot of people struggle with food
Mm,
and
yeah,
emotional eating.
me
I've
too.
been, yeah, and stopping and asking. I love that if your body needs it or wants it, and the answer is no. But how do you then
Well,
on that?
very often
Mm,
there's a deeper need that body wants.
mm.
Like it could be that child part that didn't get that love it needed as a child, and maybe it just needs a hug or a connection. And you can do, and this again comes back to what I teach. So I teach the touch part of it as well. So very often we just want to be hugged or touched, and we can do that actually for ourselves.
Really? So
Yeah.
let's take a woman who um not not having a challenging time in their marriage or relationship and turns to food or wine for comfort and goes to the fridge or the cupboard and says, okay, asks their body, do I need this? And it says no. Um, what next? They find it, they ask what the
And
body needs and gives it, and they give it to themselves so they don't go.
yeah.
All right. So like a hug or really, that's
Well,
interesting.
those are common things, but it might be something else. I've been doing some really deep work recently, and actually, what's been coming up is a need to cry.
I like
You
that.
know?
That's so freeing. Like on,
Yeah.
but what do you do? Like, so like for me, I my mom, she cries for everything. I mean, she cries for everything. And like I have like I think I've and I love my mommy. I love her so much. But like I
Yeah.
have these like I'm like I can't like I don't cry like that. And I always say to people like if you need to cry, cry. But sometimes it's so difficult. So how like I guess it's a sense of allowing yourself to be vulnerable and even to yourself, right?
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting one. I think a lot of us have been brought up. I was certainly told as a child, stop being a crybaby, stop crying, you don't
Mhm,
need to cry, sort of thing.
mhm.
So I stopped crying, and a lot of us have been taught to squash down emotions one way or another. Or like you, it could have been because, someone cries a lot, so we don't want to, do that. We want to do something else, so we squash it down because of that.
Oh, yeah,
But
yeah.
whatever the reasons, actually, we're not very good at, being with our emotions. And again, that's a process over time, I find. Um, as I said, I've been doing Tantra now for about 5 years. Um, and I probably for the first year or so, I didn't still cry. It's been a fairly recent process for me to allow those tears up. Now you can do it in quicker time, but it takes constantly being with your body.
So can you sort of explain to people who might not know what tantra is, what that practice looks like, and the correlation between that being able to cry and release and be vulnerable?
Yeah, that word tantra is such a minefield in
It is.
itself.
Mhm.
Tantra in the Western society is different to what it was traditionally. So if you go to a tantra workshop nowadays, it it generally is around being better at sex in some form. So it might be you want to get better orgasming, or you want to be more connected to your partner, or have better sex in some way. So a lot of the tantra courses out there are quite sexual, and they're designed to fulfill a need, which there's nothing wrong with it. But tantra originally, when it was brought, when it came from India, is actually a Sanskrit word that just means practice in
Oh,
Sanskrit.
okay.
Um, it's a spiritual practice, whereas a lot of other spiritual practices or religious practices take away the sexual aspect. Tantra includes it and says that actually sexual practices or sexual acts are actually and can be quite a spiritual act.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
An orgasm can have you experience like that higher power, whatever belief you have around that. It's a quite a spiritual experience, which is often why people want to have more and more of
Oh,
that.
well, they're great.
They are great.
You
And
know,
we haven't come to the orgasm bit yet.
I want to add on to that or ask you was so I quite like the art of manifestation, and I was in a couple of groups and I found out maybe like last year about orgasmic meditation, or not orgasmic meditation, manifestation. So
Mm,
because apparently when you reach that point you're vibrating at such a high level and your inhibitions are, you've let go and you've connected to self, and that's the best time to like set your intentions to
mm.
bring in what you want into your experience. So I thought that to be quite interesting, but I agree with what you're saying. That's good. Really good.
Yeah, and I think this is I would say also it's probably a good point to bring in the different types of orgasm, because
Yeah, I like that.
um, certainly the one that comes to mind, which a lot of women will know, is the sort of clitoral style orgasm.
Mm,
And I would say, from my thoughts are that a clitoral style orgasm isn't probably going to have you connected in that way necessarily to that
mm,
manifestation. Now, it may be,
mm,
but there's a reason I'm saying that.
mhm.
Um, when we orgasm, we're very much focused on the goal or the outcome.
It's true. It's true.
Which is what I teach people not to be.
Yes, yes.
For a start off, I mean, I still struggle with this one. My partner's forever telling me to like breathe and relax, don't tense up. And we do, as you know, we're taught oh, I don't know whether we're taught because it's sort of unsaid, but we naturally, when we feel an orgasm coming on, we like tense up, we stop breathing, we hold everything in, and then we're waiting for the release.
Okay, it's about
And
opposite, yeah.
so, and there's nothing wrong with clitoral orgasms. They're one type of orgasm. But again, when you start to learn about Tantra, there is so many different ways to orgasm. And actually, when we talk about the spiritual practice of Tantra, it's about enjoying every single moment, being 100% present in every moment, with feelings and sensations and pleasure in your body.
Mm,
And when we're focused on an outcome, we're not focused in the moment, we're focused on when it's going to happen, which
mm,
is at some point in the future.
mm,
So we're not really present. So manifesting from that point, I don't think, is necessarily as powerful as it could be. That if you were just enjoying building up the pleasure and the orgasm over a period of time and relaxing into it, you get this, the higher state of energy. Then you can have things like full body orgasms, which is where your
I've never
whole
had
body
I've
shakes.
never had that, and that's on my to-do list for life. That's like,
It's a good to-do list for life.
how do you, so is it just, and I'm asking this on behalf of like people in my community, um is it just as simple as connecting to self, allowing yourself to and I'm saying as simple as because I don't know, allowing yourself to relax into the process and not having like an intention or a goal that's not the main outcome, so your whole point is just to be present and enjoy what you're doing, and then the body will take you to that place of intense pleasure kind of thing.
Um, yeah, I mean, in principle, that is the simple. It is simple, and in practice,
It's
it's not simple.
no.
It's not because, first of all, we're very dead as Westerners in our body. We're not connected generally to our body.
Mm.
We're not connected to the feelings and sensations. Because again, we're so goal focused, we're not present to what's happening right now in our body. And very often, also, we're not able to cope with intense pleasure.
I like that. That's true. It's like we're
Yeah,
not allowed to feel too much or to feel too low. It's having
yeah.
to be. So how do you get to that point? I guess Tantra is the practice. It's allowing yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I encourage daily practice with this. Daily practice, yes.
I saw my face.
But,
5 years old. How do
but
you do
come
that?
on, this is a
How do you do
fun daily practice. I set homework around this.
okay, so give me an example of what that looks like. What would you start? Like if I'm like, okay, Melanie, I want to have a full body orgasm. What kind of homework would
Well, I would
you
start off simply.
do?
Again, when I do a 12-week program, and there's a reason I do it for 12 weeks,
Mm,
because I believe it's a practice of learning to connect with your body over time.
mhm.
And so for the first few weeks, all I teach people to do is connect to their hands.
To your hands. Why?
Yeah.
Ah,
Why?
like seeing your hands, feeling the
No,
energy,
touching them,
touching
basically.
them.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
okay.
your hands have huge numbers of receptors. I can't remember the total amount,
Mhm.
but there's huge amounts of pleasure receptors in our hands that are directly connected to the brain sensors.
Mhm.
But we don't feel pleasure in our hands
No. Well,
because we're too busy picking things up and putting things down without actually being present to what we're doing.
mm,
So you can do this, and you could just by exploring your hands. Try it
it
now
does
for a
feel
moment.
nice. Yeah, it does. Like you can
Just
feel. Yeah,
slow it down as well. Just really slow.
it does feel quite nice. Yeah, interesting. I'd have never thought to
So I
start
do that for about 10 minutes. That's the first practice.
touching your hands for 10 minutes. Wow.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And there's many layers of things going on there. First of all, again, as Westerners, we're not very good with attention.
Yeah, that's
We get
true.
so distracted with our phones, with the computer, with TV or whatever that we don't have attention to bring on
Yeah.
this. I no, I'm not bragging or anything, but I have like 10-hour lovemaking sessions with my partner. And it's not all lovemaking, it's like massages and doing other things as well.
On
But
10
it's like,
hours.
yeah,
How? 10, Melanie, 10 hours.
I know, it's crazy.
How?
But imagine holding the
Your life
attention
is
for like
great. Your
hours.
life is
I love my life.
yes.
And half the time I'm in tears and all that sort of stuff because it brings up this when
Ah,
you can't like
mm,
being with love and connection and intense pleasure, it brings up tears, it brings up emotions.
mm,
It's quite natural and normal because we're not used to feeling.
mm.
We're not used to connecting with our emotions. We're not used to, having our heart open. So there's a we've so protected ourselves and got this armor around us that
Mm.
this is why I'm saying it takes quite a while because you have to keep going past whatever barriers are there for you.
That's interesting. So this practice starts with self first.
Yeah.
Not yeah, so that you can't.
I believe that if you don't work on yourself first, you can't really. There's always, as I said earlier, there's always going to be some distance. You may never talk about it. I got married to my previous partner, but our sex died within 2 years of our relationship, and we became like housemates.
Mm,
And so, very often couples are living together, not completely satisfied or not happy in some way or not connected or, not nurtured in the way they want to be. And we're not talking about it.
mm,
So people drift apart and relationships fail and divorces happen or affairs happen.
mm-hmm,
And I think unless we're bringing it back to ourselves and nurturing and loving ourselves, and we also do a lot of work around consent and also, consent from a do you know what you like? So many people, women I've talked to are like, well, I don't know how to orgasm. I don't know what I like. Men do stuff to me, and I may orgasm, I may not.
so what's your process with that? Because I have, so, okay, let's backtrack, right? I'm gonna write that down because I have a few. Um,
Mm,
let's go back to, and I want to finish with the hands. I'm just gonna put that there for later. What does, I'm just really sorry, I'm just gonna stop my because I have my WhatsApp going off and I don't
mm,
want to have that clicking. What does a healthy sex life look like? Because I think you're right in saying that we know that the divorce rates are higher now than ever before.
mm, mm.
Um, what does it look like? How frequently should you be intimate with your partner? Intimate meaning not just sex, connection and things like that. And if you have found that you are sort of veering away from them, how do you bring it back?
Yeah, I think yeah, I'll answer the first question first. I don't think there's necessarily a right number or a wrong number.
Mhm.
I think this comes back to you as an individual, and if you're connected to your body, um, then you and your body knows what it wants.
Mm.
Does that make sense? There are times when I think we will have sex when we don't really want it.
Because you want to please your partner,
Want
yeah.
to please the partner, or you're, or you've said yes and you don't want to go backtrack because you realized you didn't want it after all, or they've done something you didn't like and you don't want to address that.
Mm.
So many reasons for that. And that's part of it. The things that we don't voice, the things that we don't say, that don't work for us, that actually aren't consensual a lot of the time.
That's pretty important, because that goes back into when you said about having being intimate when you don't want to, and immediately I thought about the Bible and the
Mm,
Christian type of conditioning where you are meant to be there to serve and to be there for your husband sexually, and it's like but it does go back to conditioning and being able to be confident enough within yourself and respect yourself enough to say, okay, these are my boundaries, but also to have a respectful partner who can sort of pick up on when
mm.
you're not really, and it's not really their responsibility, but I guess if they're, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, having somebody who understands how to know how to read you if you're consenting when you're not. Does that make sense? Yes and
Yeah, I
yeah.
would say I would say that that latter one is optional.
Mm, mhm.
Um, I would say that sometimes in relationships we sort of expect our partner to know what we want,
And that's
and
a problem, right?
and
And
that's a
yeah,
problem in itself.
yeah.
And so when you teach this stuff, what you teach, I think it's really empowering because I spend quite a lot of time in my courses around boundaries and consent. Because I think unless you um, know that you're 100% yes, like full body yes, does your body, when you're saying yes to making love or sex, does it want it 100%? Oh my God, yes, I want this right now.
Mm, mhm.
Because if it's not, why are you saying yes? And so that it's addressing what's going on with you that you would say yes in that case. And so I think then it brings the responsibility back to you, and then you then are the author of your own pleasure. You're the author of your own life when you know that you will only do that if you really want it.
But what if you have somebody who, and I kind of know what you're going to say. What if you have people with two opposing sex drives? So maybe you're the woman and you have a very low sex drive, and your husband wants it all the time, and your partner wants it all the time. Then what happens there?
I would say it comes back to doing the work on yourself.
Still, okay, on yourself or self?
Yeah,
Self.
I would say, I mean, you can do it as a couple, but I would say if there's one person that has a very low sex drive, I'm not a biological expert, so I'm not going to claim to
Mm.
know what the biology is, but I would say that quite a lot of my experience when that happens is that actually it's very often something in the past that's not healed that can be impacting that sex drive.
I like that. So it's about it really, and going back to the beginning when you were talking about your experiences with like your parents separating and you thinking that you were at fault, and the experience that you had with the lifeguard. It's dealing
Mm,
with it's dealing with those uncomfortable moments in life and being brave enough to say, okay, I want to. And I think it is a form of bravery, because it's easier
mm.
to just keep it suppressed and to keep,
It's
trotting
oh,
through.
it's huge bravery. I've worked with women who've been raped in the past. I've worked with women who had abuse in their childhood,
Like
like their
sexual abuse.
parents, yeah,
Let
sexual
me
and
tap into that a little bit,
abuse.
because that's something that we don't really talk a lot about, but like the stats on that are quite high as well, right?
Mm,
And I was sort of hesitant about going there because, like, I know
yeah.
a lot of people who've been through that, and I remember one of my friends was raped as a baby,
Mm,
which was really bad. And I mean, the trauma that she had was it's far stretching. Where do you even start with that one? I mean, I guess it's all just a healing process. And should you be, and I hope this doesn't sound ignorant, but if that's a case where your consent has been completely disregarded, your boundaries have been, you have none because it's that choice has been taken away from you. Should you even be doing that, being intimate, or should you be? And I'm asking that because it's like I feel like you need to
mm.
heal first before you go back. Okay, so I'm on the right train of thought.
Yeah, I would say, look, everyone chooses their own path in life, right? And
Mm.
some people might, find that too traumatic to want to be able to look at that. And that's, I have a lot of um,
Empathy.
admiration either way for someone because, that no one should have to go through some of the stuff that I've heard about, and it sounds like you've heard about.
Mm.
Um, and if someone is able to look at it, I think there's huge rewards because I think you then, as we said at the beginning of this call, that we start choosing partners that are different, maybe more loving, more connected. We start because we're honoring ourselves and our own body and what we want. So I think there is a direct correlation between, the partners we choose and the life we lead, to having dealt with some of these things.
As in, if you haven't dealt with the issues that you're
Because,
suppressing, you're
yeah.
choosing partners who are almost sort of like pushing you to do that on a subconscious level or not. Because I find,
Well,
yeah,
they could, yeah, it could be either way. It could be that they're pushing you, or they could be that they're, that pushing you down more into that trauma route because often we end up
mm,
re-traumatizing ourselves.
so deep.
So, and that's, it's horrible, but that, I know lots of people, that end up, picking part after a rape situation who might end up picking partners who are quite
Like,
abusive.
right, because it's that, is it almost like that mirroring process? Like if
Mm,
you're reflecting out what you haven't healed, what you feel inside. So until you, yeah. I've been reading, listening a lot about that. So what, such a touchy topic. I feel kind of like almost like,
yeah.
oh, should I go there? Should I not?
I
Because
know it's a tough one, isn't it? And I
it's
do want to
almost
also
like,
add, I'm not a trauma expert. I have
yeah,
worked with with women who have had sexual abuse and rape, but they've also done other work alongside it as well. If someone's in a real trauma response, then they probably ought to, if they want to do some work on that. They probably want to work with someone who's, an expertise in
Yeah,
trauma
I
healing.
would agree. Yeah.
Um, I think the work I do is very, very healing, but I also think it takes a level of being able to be present in our bodies. And very often when we've got a lot of trauma, our bodies aren't
Yeah.
safe. We don't
Yeah.
feel safe in our own body because of, if we've been raped or whatever. That was a source of, trauma. So we can't be with that. So what we do is we, not be in our body. So I think I think this work is very, very healing because it reconnects you back to your body. It reconnects you back to your voice, to your power, to your ability to be able to consent or not, and then to start slowly. I would say very slowly, to allow yourself to bring pleasure back as well. But for a lot of people who experience a lot of trauma, don't allow themselves to experience pleasure.
Understandably so, because like you said, they don't feel
Mm.
safe. So two questions. One being, obviously with this work, it's from the sound of it, like you need to be fully supported
Mm.
throughout. It's not something that you just say, okay, I'm going to do this program and do it by myself, because it brings a lot
Um,
of stuff up, right? For me, it was.
quite a few of my participants were single women who, I'm sure probably had friends around and stuff, but I don't think, I mean, it depends on how, I suppose, supported you feel in yourself, your ability to self-support and self-regulate. Um, and yes, if you've got people around you, I think it is worth having that, just in case because all this type of work can be triggering, as I said
I
earlier.
think
Like,
so, yeah.
I'm often in tears when I'm doing it with my partner, and so
Really?
yeah,
See,
oh yeah. In fact, probably more so than now ever before, because I'm
right. So let me
allowing
ask you
those
a question.
tears to come up.
So do you think that's because you are on this healing journey and you've made did you then make a conscious decision to choose a partner who would be supportive of and respectful and understanding and maybe on the same path as you, um to be there? Because I mean, I would envisage that a quote unquote normal man find that to be quite intense, 10-hour maybe maybe sessions crying in a
Yeah, he is a particularly special kind of guy, I have to say.
oh,
Um, yes and no. I mean, um, what's the answer? Um, I met my partner when I was separating from my husband. I was looking for someone who had tantric experience,
right, okay.
definitely. I
Mm.
was definitely looking for that because I think there is something in when you've got two people who are wanting to explore something together. I think that is really beautiful. Um, and what sort of happened and what showed up was, I think, in my belief, slightly manifested, but I wasn't conscious necessarily about it, because
Mm.
what showed up was someone who was into it, so much so that we're on this quite intense transformational journey. I don't think there are many people who would be doing 10-hour lovemaking sessions.
No.
And
I don't even know how that's
he's
possible.
just as much into it as I am. But it's gorgeous because I've always been a highly sexual woman.
Mm.
And I always had this experience of never being met. Like, it was always me asking for sex in the relationships I was in,
Mm.
and
Mm.
my male partner's saying, "No, I'm tired, I'm stressed." I'm like, "No, what is it?
That's
It's supposed to
different.
be the other way around."
Yeah, that's completely different. Wow.
Now it's that way around. We're both as bad as each other. We just don't want to stop.
But that was, you see, that I like that though, because I guess like you did the work and then you said you didn't specifically set out, but you manifested that. That's great
Mm,
because you did the work. So you're reflecting on
yeah.
what you, wow, that's pretty powerful. Okay. So going back to the experience of the hands and connecting to self, what other ways do you teach women or men to connect to the body. So if you feel quite disconnected, you don't know what feels good, you don't know how to orgasm, how to bring pleasure to yourself, what other ways do you teach them? Simple ways to connect to
So
self.
the 12-week program, I'm going to focus on the women's side for a minute.
Mhm.
The 12-week program starts off with the hands, but also brings the whole thing to the whole body. So,
Mm,
um, so again, we're so goal focused that we don't touch a whole of our body.
mm,
You know, it's extraordinary. Just like if you want to follow along, like just feeling your arms
mm.
and
Nice.
just noticing and, just trying out different types of touch, maybe,
Mm,
pressing in a bit or just gliding or going slower,
mm.
circles or strokes.
Quite relaxing.
It is very relaxing.
Yeah. But kids do it, don't they? Like
They
kids know.
do,
Yeah,
yeah. They're not afraid of touch. Like we get, again, I think it's something we get told, like stop touching yourself, So we stop doing this sort of stuff. So on this program, I lead, like a whole experience over the 12 weeks. So we'll cover the whole body, but we'll also do, like we'll explore the breasts. Very often women are disconnected from our breasts.
yeah.
They can be things that a man will suck on or tweak or pull or whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
do you hold your own breast? Do you
Mm,
massage your own breast? There's a connection, a direct connection to the heart from the breasts. And
mm.
if you just even holding your breast, you can feel like the energy and the connection to the heart.
I do a meditation on that. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah, it is lovely. And there's
Mm.
also a massage technique I teach called the deer technique, which is fairly well known, which is massaging in circles, either upwards or downwards. And that can either help grow your breasts or firm your breasts up if you do that
Make
regularly
them
over
bigger.
time.
You make them bigger.
I don't need bigger, but
I do. No, so you just okay.
so going downwards and like that.
And it makes them bigger.
Yeah, doing minimum of 36 times to 360 times daily. Actually, I've started doing that in the shower
Okay, that's
in the
fine. I can do it in the
morning.
shower. It makes them
And
bigger. I'm so happy to hear that.
yeah, so
Okay.
going downwards makes them bigger, like that way, and going upwards firms them up.
Okay, so I could do both. Oh, that's good. That's see, I've learned something today. I can do that in the shower. That's very
Mm.
handy.
So one of my classrooms on that 12-week program is doing this together, and we do it as a group, you
Mhm.
know. And then also we spend some time also connecting to your yoni or
I
your
love that. So
vagina.
'cause that's something that I think a lot of women are I'm not. I try. Well, I don't know how I think I am. I don't know what you might teach, but I think just looking at it, calling it a vagina, or not having like a pet name for it, and not being, I don't know, there's a lot of shame
There is a
around it.
lot of shame.
And I think there was once I think a sex coach that I was following a long time ago was saying that like we're quite disconnected from the vulva, and all of us are shaped differently, and just like there's no same fingerprint, like the same with the vulva, and like the same way that men have changing rooms where they can walk around freely and they can see the entire penis, like there should be something for
Mm,
women to be able to see other women's vulva, so it becomes nothing of like a big deal. It's just like, okay, there's another, like you would see a hand or like a bum in the changing room. And I thought that to be quite interesting because a lot of people don't know what it even looks like. And I think, oh my God, like it's a
no, and a lot of women, again, from sharing on my programs, have shared that they think there's something wrong with their vulva. It's like the wrong size. It's not
Mm.
perfect because whatever pictures they've seen,
And porn plays a big deal in that as well.
porn is
Like,
a
the porn
problem.
pussy
Yeah.
and having like the perfect shape and all of that stuff. Yeah, it's a huge.
Yeah, so we grow up with this idea that there's something dirty and wrong with that area. So the work I do, we do spend some time looking in the mirror at our own
That's good. I
newness,
think
which
that's,
is
yeah.
lovely.
Mm.
I also do some work on looking at the different parts as well, because we often don't know the different parts of our vulva.
Mm.
So like the lips and the clitoris and
Mhm.
the anus, the anus as well, and all the bits
Knowing
in
your body.
between. So we spend some time exploring that perineum, which is a very pleasurable area. So we spend some time just looking and touching in the mirror, and then we'd spend some time also caressing each like individual part.
Hmm.
Because again, if we are just used to clitoral orgasm, which most of us are, we just, certainly from my experience, I'd rub in a certain place till I came, and that would be just one place.
Mm-hmm.
But there's sensation in the whole of the areas, and all the different areas feel slightly differently, and they're very,
Mm-hmm.
very pleasurable.
Really interesting.
But it's also then combining that with the whole of the body. To have a whole body orgasm, you can't just focus on the vagina and the vulva area.
I
It's
didn't know
about
that.
waking up the whole of the body, so pleasuring and feeling sensations in the whole of the body, from your feet to your legs. So a whole body orgasm is where your whole body shakes. But it shakes because it's experiencing such intense pleasure in the whole of the body.
Do you think anybody could get to that point? Because I mean, that
Oh, there's lots of people that get to that point. I'm joining a workshop this weekend, which is on full body orgasm.
right. I read this book called, Pussy. Do you know that book?
um, I think I've heard of it. I haven't read it.
Yeah, and she was talking about like how the guy would demonstrate on her how to be how a woman should be touched and how to experience pleasure, and she was able to get herself to orgasm in front of a room of people, and I was
Yeah,
like, oh God, like that I can never do that, like that. So
that does happen in some tantric workshops.
seriously, no,
Yeah, oh yeah. Now, somewhere in the world, there'll be a tantric workshop going
where
on,
there's somebody
probably
demonstrating
like
to the
that.
person how to do that.
Either demonstrating or participants doing that. I've been in workshops where
Have you?
participants, yeah, I've done
Oh,
it.
that just gave me chills. I couldn't do that. Okay, that's
But
intense.
in some respects, that is also a limitation in
Yeah,
our
100%.
ability to be able to express ourselves.
Do you think I couldn't? Yeah, I would hands up. Couldn't do that. Hands up. That would be like that's intense because like to me, it's conditioning. It screams no. It screams like this is an act, a spiritual act that should be between two people. Nobody else should be watching. It should. But then again, I guess it's exploration. It's education. It's all of those
Well,
other.
also, you want to have it's interesting you say the word should. Should be between two
Mm,
people, should be like this. Where have
mhm.
those shoulds come from?
It's conditioning.
It's
It's conditioning.
conditioning.
Yeah, and that's
And
so.
Tantra is all about, one of the big things I love about Tantra is about saying that actually examining taboos. Why is it we have certain things that are not, you shouldn't do? Like, what's wrong with, people having orgasm in a group scenario? If it is spiritual, then you're connecting to a spiritual higher power.
That's crazy.
Sorry,
No, it's
my
true.
voice is just going there, funnily enough.
Yeah, so that
And I'm not saying it's for everyone, but it's interesting that we they have this this idea that's just been come about because we've been told that's not what we should be doing.
what's your experience of I guess religious conditioning on how somebody like let's talk about self-love because I think that's a common theme that runs through everything. Um how you love yourself, how you feel able to touch and self-pleasure. How do you educate or teach, or what are your thoughts on how religion? Because I know people who say, oh, and they're in between relationships, but they don't self-pleasure. They don't know how to orgasm. They'll wait for a partner because it feels wrong to do that because the
Mhm.
Bible says or religion says. And I believe I'm very spiritual. I believe in the Bible. I believe in God true and true. But I also do resonate with that to some level because it's deep conditioning. So how do you work with people to overcome the shame, the guilt, the almost like betrayal, like you're being disobedient, you're sinning? That's a big one.
Mm.
Then that comes with that. I'm doing something bad.
Yeah, I think it comes back to what I was saying about the doing the body work.
Well, okay, to that. Okay,
I,
interesting.
d- I think I think a lot of what I teach is very simple. You know, it is about connecting to the body, talking to the body, touch the body. I try and keep my messages simple because I think sometimes we overcomplicate things
100%. Yeah, we
as
will take on
well.
things that are.
And actually, when we're with the body, um, I think very often there's something behind that shame.
Hmm.
You know, it's a bit like what I was talking about with the eating, right? You know, very often there's something behind the very thing that we think we want.
Yeah, and it's yeah, yeah.
And that can be very often as simple as love and connection, you know, and those I think are very core to what we need, like connecting to ourselves, connecting to our heart. And I think when you start connecting to your body, you're able to release a lot of shame because actually the body just wants to feel that connection. So, loving yourself and giving that love to yourself allows you to release that. Does that make sense? And it's not even necessarily a sexual act, even though, you know, a lot of my programs, my 12-week programs goes into the sexual arena. Actually, we're not talking about sex to a lot big degree.
Mhm.
Where, you know, I called my program Being in Love with You.
I like that.
Yeah, because I believe the sexual act is about being in love with you. Like loving you is the core of everything. So when you're talking about religious beliefs, you know, you could have someone who says, well, I don't want to masturbate, but actually, you know, is able to have that connection to their body and that love for themselves.
And it still feels good. Yeah.
And that's it. And but that's it. That's, you know, that's everything they need and want, and their body needs and wants. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's a choice. Now, if someone is following a religious belief, but they want to be having sex, that incongruency could cause problems.
Mm.
And that's where I would say you want, again, I don't make any judgments here, but you want to, again, it's coming back to you and trusting you. What does your body need? Um, a lot of religious texts take out that spiritual aspect
Mm.
because they wanted to condition people into going into to marriages, having babies, and having that family context. So in a lot of religions, that sexual act is sort of made wrong. It's like we're told it's not, you know, it shouldn't be done.
Mm-hmm.
But that actually can bring a lot of incongruency with what you actually feel deep down.
Yeah, because I heard on a what do I remember on one of the BBC programs, and it was this lady that came on that said how she actually developed a condition where her vagina was so tight it wasn't able to be penetrated like she because she was just so aware of what she was doing was like wrong to her that she physically couldn't let
Yeah.
anything in. And I thought to myself, wow, like I mean, anytime it's powerful what the mind, how it affects, you know, the way that we
Mhm.
respond to things. So that's
And
an
that's not just in religious
yeah,
context
yeah.
either. There is something that I do if I work with people on person, and there are practitioners, lots of practitioners out there that do it, like a yoni massage or a tantric massage, which
Like
can
yoni massage.
include the yoni, the vaginal area.
Yeah, yeah,
In
yeah.
tantra is called yoni, and a yoni massage is a very healing process, which is specifically designed to deal with that
Oh
because
wow, I didn't know.
all of us have stored tension in our vaginal area because of all of this sort of stuff, our conditioning, our, you know, where we've been penetrated, where we haven't wanted it, where we've, you know, gone against our consent, where we've been raped or anything, you know, and it doesn't have to be really serious trauma,
Maybe something
but we've held a lot of trauma in that area. And so a yoni massage is designed to relax that area slowly so that you can then start to feel pleasure and have penetration at some point if you
that's
want.
really interesting. I you see I've learned a couple of interesting bits. I never knew that. Never ever knew that. Okay. With the program that you're talking about, can you just tell us a little bit about that? If anybody wanted to find out more information around it, what the falling in love with you, what it looks like, is it virtual?
Yes, yes. I'm not sure where you're gonna. I've sent you the link, so I'm showing you you're gonna put it with this video. So, the link is just a sort of nice sort of descriptive page.
Mhm.
Um, I I'm not. I haven't attached a registration page to it because um, I want people, because this is a very sensitive area, so I want to either have a one-to-one or I'm nearer the time I'll set up taster sessions as well, so that I make sure people are ready for it. Because we talk, as we talked about earlier, it might not be suitable for someone who's got a
Some
lot of
sort of trauma.
trauma.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Um, so I've not opened it up for just straight registration because I want to make sure that people are ready for it and that
Good.
they're a complete yes from it from a
Yeah,
body point of view.
100% yes.
Yes.
I like
Um,
that.
but what it looks like is, yeah, it's a 12-week program. I have an assistant who she's really, really amazing at meditations. So most sessions we do a meditative piece. And then we'll go into some kind of body work, which is, what we've been talking about. So the first few sessions are quite gentle, maybe touching their hands. We do a lot of work around consent because I wouldn't want to lead anyone into a more sexual arena
Mm,
unless I can be sure that they can be 100% consensual with themselves.
mm,
So it's quite easy as a practitioner to lead someone into something that actually, later on they say, oh, I went along with it and I wasn't feeling it, and then actually can re traumatize someone. So
mm,
if I get someone to be looking at their yoni,
mhm,
I want to make sure that they can say, no, I don't want this right now.
mm.
So we do a lot, we spend about 3 or 4 weeks doing various consent exercises.
And this is over a daily period of time as well. So some.
Um, no, it's a 12-week program, so it's one classroom a week.
Okay.
It's on Zoom at the moment. I've the program starts. This one starts on the 9th of September.
All right.
So it's on Zoom once a week on Thursday evenings,
Mhm,
UK time, Thursday
mhm.
evening. I may do it in person at some point, but I thought actually there's so many benefits to doing it on Zoom anyway,
Amazing.
because
Mm.
you can do a lot of this. A lot of people feel really safe actually because they're in their own
I
environment and
would.
they're
I would
not
literally.
doing it in a workworkshop
Yeah.
environment.
I 100% would be. I would be behind the screen. I would. If this.
So I think there's lots of advantages for doing it, and it means that other people, from around the world who might not have been able to come to a workshop in London can
Yes,
do
true.
it. So I think there's so many advantages. Um, yeah, and each week we have a theme. So as I said, the first half of the program, the first 6 weeks or so, it's very much starting off with a gentle touch and the consent pieces. We'll do breakout rooms where you work with a partner.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you might be asking consent questions and asking for that person to feel into their body. What does it feel like to feel a no in your body?
Mm.
What does it feel like to feel a yes? Because we don't even know those sorts of questions. What do you want right now?
Can I ask you a random question?
Yeah.
So, is there a link between people who have sex and experience pain when they're not fully consented to actually going through that act? Like there's a disconnect between themselves and their partner. A completely random question, but then they feel like the sex is not pleasurable and there's a little bit of pain with it. Is there a correlation with that? With that being a no?
I would
You know what I
I
mean?
would say so, yes. I mean, I again, it's difficult to say unless you're talking to that individual.
Mm,
But I would say generally in my experience, yeah, um, our body knows everything.
mm,
And so our body, to share from myself, I have arthritis in my hip. It's been a long-term condition for
That's so
about 10
cool.
years now. And it's slowly getting better. And I believe it was directly related to um, tensions, directly related to the fact I wasn't happy. I wasn't having sex when I wanted to have sex. So I wasn't, feeling love and connection.
Mm.
And I did, from going to doing the BDSM stuff, I went into going into pain and stuff when I was drunk and stuff, which I think was not body consensual. So
Because
I've
that's
given my
quite hurtful.
body a lot of abuse over the years.
Mm.
Um, and so our body, I mean, I was reading a book a while ago. I love the title. Our body keeps the score, it's called.
That's I was talking about that
Isn't it?
book.
It's
Yeah,
brilliant book, but I love the title as well because it's
yeah.
just so true. What we do, what we put out with, what we don't talk about, what we go along with, it stores in our body.
Can I ask you another question? So
Yeah.
as we, because I know we're wrapping up, but this is so as we're talking about this, I'm thinking like, because I have a daughter, and I'm thinking to myself, shit, she's 9, and she could be, because I'm up with her 24/7. Um, what's your advice for? I'm going to focus on girls for now, because I think we
Mm,
have more around sexuality and all of that stuff, right?
yeah. Yeah.
What's your advice for mums bringing up girls, daughters, to teach them about, and I hope this is something that you can answer to, no pressure, to teach them about pleasure, self love, acceptance, consent, or to even heal from what might have been traumatic for them
Mm,
in their lives so that they don't grow up to be like, I wouldn't want Vivi to grow up like me, where I know I have things around that I need to deal with from a cultural and religious perspective, because that's a whole other story, but I won't even go into that. How do we then teach them to, or help them so that they don't go through what we've done? Because obviously, like, I want her to be able to have an amazing sex life. I want
yeah.
her to be fully confident in who she is, no issues around her body, understanding, because I mean, trauma will happen, God forbid, but understanding how to navigate through that. So what's your advice?
I think there's so many different things. I mean, pretty much everything we've talked about is applicable, I think, to children.
Mm.
Um, consent is, to me, is huge. I think we should be
That's a big
teaching.
thing for you. Yeah, I've
Well,
realized that. Yeah.
it's also for children. So often we we make decisions for children, or I use the an example as well that we push children to have unwanted touch as well. Like, I don't know whether, you've experienced this, but I remember being told, oh, you've got to go and hug that auntie that I didn't like, or
Yeah, don't
kiss
make
that
me do that.
uncle. And yeah, I'm not saying you
Yeah.
would, but
No,
I'm
no, I
saying
understand.
that
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm
it's
connecting to what you
the
said.
things that we inadvertently encourage our children to do that are against their body, like teaching them that their body has sovereignty, that they are entitled to be able to say yes or no, and they should say yes or no to what doesn't feel right for them. I watched a beautiful video, a TEDx video, not that long ago, where a woman who was a mother, who sounds like she's done similar training to me, is teaching her children. She's got a son and a daughter, who's teaching her children that they have choice over certain choices. So one of the things that she said to her son is, like, you can decide what jacket you want to wear. And one day they apparently went out in the freezing snow without a jacket. And she could feel the neighbours looking at her, judging her for letting her son go out without a jacket. But she was like, it was his choice. And, there are some things that actually we do have to choose for them, like they need to go to school, they need to eat healthily, or whatever is, your rules. But I think there are certain areas that we also
Yeah.
can really allow our children to know that they have power over their voice, because a lot of this comes down to, like, our voice and be able to say yes and no. I would also say some of the touch exercises that we do,
I like that.
you know,
Yeah.
again, as parents, I'm not a parent myself, but, as parents, we can inadvertently touch our children,
Mm.
maybe give them a hug because we want to hug them. Well,
Mhm.
did they consent? Did they consent to that?
Yeah.
Did they want a hug, or was that all about what you wanted?
Yeah. I agree with that. And it's like when, yeah, and it's like, so I was like, oh, Fifi, can I have a hug? And she goes, Mommy, no. It's being able to
Which is
respect
great.
that.
And
Yeah.
it's brilliant. It sounds like you're being quite conscious about
I
that, which
have
is
to.
really
It is.
great.
I think she's at the point now. I mean, she's 9, and they've started the talks around sex and
Mm.
puberty and all of that stuff in her class. And I think it's I definitely want to bring her up differently in terms of how she views sex and sexuality and her connection to self. And I want her to not have any inhibitions. I don't want it to be sexually loose, but I don't want it to be a thing where it's like, oh my God, I'm doing something good or bad. I just want it to be what it is, which is something pleasurable. But it has to start with that the consent and the feeling of power, and my voice matters, and I do have a say. And I think that's actually a really good strong foundation to work from.
I think so too. And I think there's something about the also that leads into the open dialogue as well. Not being able to be with that non-judgment. So,
Mm.
again, if it can be quite easy to think, oh, well, I wanted to go out with that, good boy that's got a, good
Oh,
reputation or
well, you know
whatever.
what? I think I might put myself to that one. I do want bad boys, yeah. But I
And
think,
so
yeah,
we can get our judgments in the way, and that
yeah.
also then can have teenagers, close up because they don't feel that they can share. And I think it's having that ability to be able to, connect and be able to share and talk about some of these issues in a non-judgmental, open
Mm,
way.
mm.
And that's not even about sex either. That's about a
It's,
view on life. And if you're that in life, then I think in some respects sexual things become a non-thing because it's just part of the way you are together,
I love this topic. It's so many layers. Okay, let's finish
isn't
up the
it?
program. Yeah, there are lots. So you're talking about the Zoom, the breakout rooms, the consent. You spend time on consent and feeling the yes and feeling the no, and then I ask you, can I ask you a question?
Yeah,
And then
and then we digressed.
yeah. So following on from the consent, what does the rest of the program look like?
Yeah, so then we start to move into the sort of full body, noticing full body pleasure and touch and
Mhm.
connection, and then we spend a week on the breasts and week on the yoni, and then we finish off with that's pretty much the 12 weeks, but the final week is then bringing it all together with dance and movement, erotic dance and
Oh,
movement
that's
and
nice.
play, and just really being in your bodies and enjoying it as a powerful feminine woman. So it's really leading people on a journey from that really simple sort of touch aspect to really feeling like a, powerful, sexy, erotic woman.
I love that, and that's a different spin on self love and I guess self pleasure, and
It is,
it's not
isn't
fully
it?
about sex and penetration and all of that. It's bringing it back to you.
Yeah. And it comes back to, I think, to me now, I started my own training now is in a much more spiritual tantric base. And to me, it's all about that love and that connection. I think there are plenty of places where you can get tips on how to be better lovers if you want to be. But this to me is real true self-love and self-connection to pleasure in your body and who
Hmm.
we are as women.
And the best thing is you could have a full body orgasm. So I
You
definitely am going to
can.
explore that because that's something I have to explore before I die on this earth, before I leave this earth. That's a goal. Melanie, so where can people connect with you? Are you on Facebook or Instagram?
Yes, so my main website is called conscioussexuality.co.uk. I'm sure we'll put the links on.
Oh, yeah.
I'm on Facebook as well. I think my Facebook page is called Conscious Touch actually, just because I started off with the Conscious Touch page. Um, but I'm on Instagram as well, and I'll also send links for the programs.
That would
So
be
there's
fantastic.
also, we haven't talked about it much, but we've also got like also a sort of mini program starting next week, which is more about the sort of boundaries and the consent piece. So it's a nice lead into the main program if you just wanted to sort of explore that arena.
Fantastic. So guys, I hope you've enjoyed. If you have questions, Melanie, which we touched on a lot of different things today, didn't
We
we?
did.
Yeah, please do feel free to reach out to Melanie if that's okay. And I will share the links
Yeah,
on the,
definitely.
yeah, I'll share the links on the description box below. Um, I loved it. Lots of light bulb
Brilliant.
moments. So thank you so much. We'll be in touch, Melanie. I wish you all the best going ahead with your programs. I hope you
Thank
have the right
you.
people sign up for it and continue the amazing work and continue
Oh,
sharing because I think it's conversations that we need 100% need to be having. So
definitely. I think
yeah.
that's part of my passion is to actually be having these conversations in the world.
Mm,
And it's not about a program for me, it's about a way of life, as you may have
mm.
gathered from this,
Yeah,
you
10
know,
hour. Okay,
about
that's the next thing I have to add onto my list, a 10-hour lovemaking session. I'm so scared. I'll message you like, "Bam, I've done
Definitely.
it." All right. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I'll see
You're welcome. Thank you. Bye
you. You're
bye.
welcome. Bye.